welcome to a discussion that I've been wanting to have for a while. I know I'm kind of in a monkey suit, but that's because I plan on going and just kind of moving through these videos, but I'm in my demonstration outfit. So anyways, we're going to start with talking about fitness basics. This is a subject that I've been kind of sporadically covering, and some of this might be redundant, but I wanted to go ahead and lay the foundation for getting people to understand combat fitness. This is something I've been working on for a while now as far as research, stuff like testing myself and looking at other anecdotal evidence and stuff like that. So anyways, I'm just going to cut it short by breaking down, things that you can do and the reality of real combat fitness. So the fitness basics, they're isolated movements, and there's isolated movements that you cannot replicate athletically. You can't do curls and pull-ups and, necessarily push-ups to really rectify the need for specific movement practice for adaptation at those specific movements. Because keep in mind, you're also doing this stuff with weight, and it's balanced in a certain way depending on what you're wearing. So the need to actually isolate those movements and replicate it with the weight that you're actually using instead of just a generic weight vest, that's actually pretty balanced. Using your combat load and actually loading it up maybe a little bit more than what it would actually be will develop that muscle and that adaptation. And obviously progressively do this, but it'll develop that adaptation and muscle, basically, getting your muscles used to performing those movements that you cannot perform in the gym. So there are certain things that are explosive and others that are isometric. You can't necessarily replicate things athletically for, good aiming. And it's funny that a lot of people that just spend more time in the gym than not, when they go to teach people, they say that like your first sight picture is the best one you're going to get because you're going to start shaking. That's not true, because it's already been shown that isometric exercise is not only going to be different than just, doing reps, but also the isometric exercise in the specific manner that you're going to constantly be doing things, such as aiming, is different than what you would do at the gym. And you're going to work on muscles and basically program those muscles to behave differently than they would when you're just performing repetitions or arbitrary things to build strength in certain areas. So if you're trying to do like shoulder lifts, it's not going to be the same as holding it out here, just as the diamond push-up is not the same as wide push-ups and stuff like that, or pseudo planche push-ups or pike push-ups. So anyways, that's an example of isometric setup. Now explosive, when we're taking a kneeling, Travis Haley actually made a video about this, about him conducting movements because of his knee surgeries that he's had to do. So he actually exercises like lunges, but they're not necessarily lunges, they're kneeling positions, and he practices them in the gym. He turns it into an athletic movement for adaptation purposes and actual habitual purposes, developing a habit that is good for not only preserving the knees, but also snapping into a position that actually allows good stability and without sacrificing mobility, such as widening your knee and your foot apart, and in order to get more basically a stable stance, if you will, a stable platform for shooting. That's an example. Or finding out how to go from the prone up to the kneeling and then standing. So turning it into an athletic movement while wearing weight. It's a lot differently than just performing lunges or performing burpees. That can actually help you in developing explosiveness, but if you have to turn that burpee into a replication of what you would be doing, like with a pistol, one-handed. With a rifle, you're going to have to go down on, like a forearm or something like that, or kind of roll over and do that, and do it explosively and quick, going down slow, going up fast, stuff like that. So we'll cover these specific movements that are kind of isolated and different than, athletic movements, but I'm just discussing how it is actually separate, and it will not give you the results that you require, which is endurance and explosiveness in those specific movements. You can't replicate that in the gym. So I don't go to the gym and I don't perform any athletic movements anymore. They have not helped me in performing very well on the range, compared to replicating what I do on the range and what I need to do in order to perform in a combat setting, from my experience of having had to perform in a combat setting in my time in the military. So, some examples of these isolated movements that I'm going to be covering is forms of kneeling and stuff like that, and going up and down into the kneeling and stuff. And I'm going to talk about the technique, so, you know, wait for that, and I'll talk about the build-up once you add weight, what to do. Then aiming. So it depends on if it's a rifle or a pistol, and there's ways to actually incorporate weights and stuff like that instead of just working with a lightweight gun, because that's not really going to help you progress quickly. Like, for instance, just kind of a little tip here that I'm not really going to cover elsewhere, but you'll learn the specific movements. But performing an isolated exercise with a weight, I don't have any weights in this room, but performing an isometric exercise such as aiming with weights that are 2 to 3 times heavier than the weapon you're using, 3 to 4 times heavier, like if you're using a pistol, because it's like 2 pounds, and I recommend like a 10-pound weight. Performing an aiming exercise for 30 seconds to a minute can drastically increase that muscle capability and the stabilizers for remaining absolutely motionless, and helping them get oxygenated to what they're supposed to do, and obviously having rest periods and several reps in doing that. But doing that before actually going to the range, you're going to notice a vast difference in your ability to actually hold the gun still. Now, there's other things in grip technique and stuff to fine-tune it for that, that fine ability to pull the trigger without moving the gun in isolation, but that's a different subject. But this is just combat fitness, your ability to maintain that aim, and obviously it's going to go down to a mixture of technique and specific isolation for actually pulling the trigger. But this is the tougher part, is maintaining that hold. Then we talk about position changes, and we also got to think about it with weight. Because that's where we have to adopt a way of changing position that is not going to sacrifice our ability to change position using stabilizers instead of joints. And stabilizers is basically just different muscles that are being engaged. That may be similar to what you would use athletically, but you're forcing them to be engaged by spending more time having them engaged. Hence, I reference going down slowly into a kneeling and stuff like that, and going down into the prone. You build those specific muscles that basically divert the work from the joint, and you're not just throwing yourself down and forgetting your specific procedure for changing position. You're strengthening those muscles and creating a habit for not throwing yourself on your joints and potentially hurting yourself. So then, of course, leans. That's an isometric that a lot of people have a problem with, is being able to lean out far enough to minimize your profile, and you have to get your ass and all your gear back. But working on those isometrics, you're working on muscles that aren't necessarily exercised all that well when you're just performing reps, and strengthening that specific position that you're going to have to do, and also realizing the certain stabilizers that you're going to need, or the technique you're going to have to use in order to balance yourself a lot better, cannot be replicated anywhere else or worked on anywhere else except for with gear, with the kind of leans and rollouts and whatever you want to call it, that you're going to be needing to exercise. And you might find that the stereotypical way of having your left leg out here and your right knee right here or whatever is not very good necessarily. Actually having it a little bit back will help you stabilize and be able to lean out more, because these abs are a little bit stronger depending on how much how much of your weight is up top on a plate carrier. Just examples. So also movement with weight. This can be very hard on your joints and stuff like that. So instead of going heel to toe, for instance, you want to go toe to heel when you're actually, trying to patrol and stuff like that, saving your knees. And even if you're jogging, working on going toe to heel will help you preserve those knees, or just walking around with it, it would actually be a lot better, because you're not locking out your knees and putting all the weight on your knees. That's why running is sometimes seen as like boots and utes runs can be seen as a very detrimental exercise to your joints, and very hard on your joints. That's not necessarily true if you're going toe to heel, because it never allows it to engage. That's why uphill running is typically preferred, because you don't engage those knees in a full locked out position and throw all your weight on it. So, especially when you're working in weight, with weight, and then you have to stop, you need to work on those specific movements, like sprints and then stopping, so you can actually not only develop a good technique for controlling that weight and balancing yourself, you're counterbalancing yourself for that instant change of momentum, but that's going to develop those muscles to strengthen your legs and potentially help you get faster and stuff like that, because speed can be your security, even carrying weight. So I just want to go ahead and talk about a reference that others have made, and one of them would be Max Velocity talking about people that are basically lowering the amount of ammo or foregoing wearing body armor because it's too hard to move. Well, if your physical training is up and you're actually performing these movements, you're going to adapt and you're going to have more strength to perform that, and you're going to have more endurance and stuff, because it's like they don't want to work, they just want to sacrifice security and defense capability. Like I know some militia people who are like, well, you need to be lightweight for mobility and stuff, so we only carry 3 magazines. If you're even if you're in a team and your whole thing is breaking contact and you have people chasing after you, it is not paper. You're gonna have to constantly fight, and you could be chased for hours. I mean, one example is the story from the Navy SEALs, like Marcus Luttrell, where he started out with 13 magazines of 5.56, and they weren't exactly spraying and praying like they did in the Vietnam War with LRPs, where they were carrying like 600 rounds or whatever, along with 10, 12 grenades, but they weren't just spraying the jungle because that's the best way you could deal with a concealed enemy, but you had 13 magazines that went down to 1 within 6 hours because they were being constantly pursued. They could have ran down that mountain, but they couldn't. If they turned their backs, they got shot. So that's just an example of how you running and having speed and stuff like that isn't always going to really help you. You're going to need to be able to defend yourself. And you need to be able to carry those things that are going to help you sustain yourself also. And be capable of fighting back and also protecting yourself. They didn't even have body armor on, and they were able to move pretty quickly with the kind of stuff that they had without, having their packs on even. And they still got screwed up pretty bad because, the angles of fire and stuff like that, you could run into that. And the best way is to be able to fight back. If you don't have the ammo to fight back, you don't have the time to live. So ammo is time is one of the things and stuff like that, but also being able to manage that use of ammunition. So anyways, fitness is one of the big parts in being able to handle that, so you don't feel like you have to sacrifice weight. So it's just unnecessary. If you really look at what you're going to be needing to do, you need to be prepared, and you need to have enough to be able to last. I'm not going to give a generic amount of ammunition, but I'm just saying that you don't need to, pretty much any time you go out, I would recommend being prepared with at least 12 hours of ammunition, at least on your person, on a system that you're not going to take off. So this whole battle belt thing where you have 2 on your battle belt and 3 up here and that's all you have, really? You have 6 magazines for issued to you in the military, but most people will buy more because guess what? Most of the time when firefights are happening, you have to do suppression, and you also have to basically sit there and duke it out, not only once, but several times, and you might not get resupplied. And especially if you're a civilian and you have to fight with a rifle, where is your resupply coming from? Probably not going to be as good as the military and being able to drop off shipments, and you're probably not going to have the team in order to back you up and all the special weapons that can help suppress and stuff like that, drone strikes, and even with that they still have to use a lot of rifle and machine gun ammunition. So let's not be retarded about this. Let's go ahead and think, and this is your best way of being able to go in prepared. It's a good foundation to where your ability to go in prepared is better. So, with all that said, I appreciate you guys watching, and you guys